She whispered one French sentence, just trying to help a struggling table. The mafia boss's head snapped up. His eyes locked on hers like she'd just revealed the world's biggest secret.
She thought it ended there.
But he kept her close, and he hasn't let her leave since. The crystal chandelier above table 7 cost more than most people made in a year. Lorenzo De Luca knew this because he'd paid for it himself when he bought the Hotel Marchand 3 years ago. Everything in this restaurant, from the Italian marble floors to the $16 breadsticks, existed for one purpose: to remind people who held the power in this city. Tonight, that power was being tested. Tell me again why nobody thought to bring someone who speaks French? Lorenzo's voice was quiet, which made it worse. When he yelled, people knew what to expect. When he went quiet, men disappeared. His consigliere, Vincent Russo, shifted in his seat. 40 years of loyalty meant he could survive moments like this, but barely. Boss, we thought Carmine. Carmine took 2 semesters in college 20 years ago. Lorenzo cut him off.
He can order wine.
He can't read this. The sealed dossier sat in the center of the table like a bomb. Cream-colored paper, wax seal stamped with an ornate P, the kind of document that crossed the Atlantic in diplomatic pouches and cost 6 figures to intercept. Their Paris contact had promised intelligence that would change everything: routes, names, the whole infrastructure of their European rivals laid bare. But it was written entirely in French. Around the table sat 8 men in expensive suits. His lieutenants. His most trusted. Between them, they controlled shipping routes, construction contracts, and city councilmen. They could make a union strike disappear or rig a zoning vote. They knew how to move money through 12 shell corporations without leaving a trace. Not one of them could read French. What about Marco? Tony Benedetti suggested, nervously straightening his tie. His mother was French-Canadian. She was from Quebec. She spoke French like I speak Italian, enough to talk to Grandma, not enough to read intelligence documents. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. And even if she could help, you want me to call someone's 70-year-old mother into this meeting? Across the private dining room, 2 men in dark suits stood near the door. The couriers from Paris, Alain and Christophe, watched this disaster unfold with poorly concealed amusement. They'd been promised a partnership with the De Luca organization. Instead, they were watching a roomful of Americans fail at basic literacy. This wasn't just embarrassing. This was dangerous. Lorenzo's rivals would hear about this within hours. The great Lorenzo De Luca, brought down by a language barrier. By tomorrow, every crew from Boston to Miami would be telling jokes about it. His authority depended on perception, on being 3 steps ahead, always in control, impossible to surprise. Right now, he looked like an idiot. Boss, Vincent tried again. We could find a professional translator by morning. Someone discreet. By morning, this intel is worthless. The shipments move at dawn. Lorenzo stood, his chair scraping against marble. We needed this decoded tonight. An hour ago. And instead...
Correspondance confidentielle concernant les mouvements suspectés dans le corridor maritime du Nord.
The voice was female, soft, and came from behind him. Every head turned. The waitress stood 3 feet away, holding a tray of empty wine glasses. She was young, mid-20s maybe, with dark hair pulled back in a practical bun and the kind of face that normally disappeared into the background. Her uniform was standard service black. A small name tag read Elena. She'd been refilling water glasses for the past hour. None of them had really looked at her. Lorenzo stared. What did you just say? Elena's eyes widened slightly, as if she'd just realized she'd spoken out loud. I'm sorry, Mr. De Luca. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just the document on the table. I saw the header, and... You can read this? Lorenzo picked up the dossier, holding it toward her. Yes. It's French. The header says, Confidential Correspondence Regarding Suspected Movements in the Northern Maritime Corridor. She spoke clearly, her accent better than the Paris couriers. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. Don't apologize. Lorenzo's voice had changed completely. Sharp attention replaced anger. Keep going. What does the next line say? Elena hesitated, glancing at the 8 stone-faced men watching her. Are you sure? This seems like a private. Read it. She took a small step closer, her eyes scanning the page.
Suite aux renseignements fournis par notre source à Marseille, nous avons identifié she posed, translating as she went.
Following intelligence provided by our source in Marseille, we have identified 3 primary channels through which contraband enters the northeastern ports. The room had gone completely silent. Lorenzo watched her face as she read. No hesitation in her pronunciation. No stumbling over technical terms. She read French the way native speakers did, with rhythm and understanding, not word-by-word translation. Where did you learn French? He asked. University. I majored in comparative literature before She caught herself. It's not important. I can leave this with you, if you'd like privacy. No, Lorenzo made a decision in that instant, the kind of split-second call that had kept him alive for 20 years. Vincent, clear the room. Everyone except Alain and Christophe. And her. Boss. Vincent's eyebrows shot up. You heard me. Meeting's over. We'll reconvene tomorrow. Lorenzo never took his eyes off Elena. Miss, what's your full name?
Elena Marsh.
Miss Marsh is going to help us with a translation problem. Isn't that right? It wasn't really a question. Elena looked at the dossier, at the room full of dangerous men in expensive suits, at the 2 French couriers who'd suddenly sat up very straight. Whatever this was, it was clearly bigger than spilled wine and dinner orders. Yes. I can help with that. Good. Lorenzo gestured to the chair beside him. Have a seat. We're going to be here a while. As his lieutenants filed out, throwing confused glances over their shoulders, Lorenzo noticed something. The Parisian courier, Alain, was watching Elena with an expression that made Lorenzo's instincts fire. Not attraction. Not curiosity. Recognition. That was interesting. Vincent, Lorenzo called out quietly, just before his consigliere reached the door. Make sure Miss Marsh gets home safely tonight. And have someone check our employee files. I want to know everything about her by morning. Vincent nodded and disappeared. Lorenzo settled back into his chair and slid the dossier across the table. Let's start from the beginning, Miss Marsh. And take your time. I want every word. Elena picked up the document with steady hands, though he noticed her pulse jumping in her throat. Smart girl. Smart enough to be scared, but composed enough not to show it. She had no idea what she'd just walked into.
Neither did he yet.
But Lorenzo de Luca hadn't survived 20 years in this business by ignoring opportunities when they fell into his lap. And something told him this quiet waitress with perfect French was about to become a lot more valuable than either of them expected. Elena began to read, and the real game started. 3 hours later, Elena's feet were killing her. She'd been standing in her work shoes since her shift started at 6. Now it was past midnight, and she was in a windowless private room on the hotel's 3rd floor, surrounded by 4 men who looked like they'd stepped out of a crime movie. Which she was starting to realize they basically had. Read that part again, Lorenzo said. He sat across from her, tie loosened, jacket draped over his chair. The section about Marseille. Elena found her place in the document. Her eyes were getting tired, but she pushed through.
Les roses de Marseille fleurissent en juin, comme l'écrivait Dumas dans son récit des conspirations.
She translated, The roses of Marseille bloom in June, as Dumas wrote in his account of conspiracies. Vincent, who'd been taking notes for the past hour, looked up. That's the 3rd time the document mentions flowers. And the 2nd time it references an author. It's strange phrasing, Elena agreed. She studied the sentence again. Something about it felt off. Actually, Dumas never wrote specifically about roses in Marseille. He wrote about the port, about conspiracy, but not. She stopped mid-sentence. What? Lorenzo leaned forward. This isn't just a report. Elena's heart rate picked up as pieces clicked together. It's coded. Look, comme l'écrivait Dumas, as Dumas wrote. Why quote an author in an intelligence document? Unless. She flipped back through the pages she'd already translated, scanning with new eyes.
Here.
Page 2. Céline les mots de Hugo concernant les miserables que tendent. According to Hugo's words about the miserable ones who wait, she looked up at Lorenzo. Victor Hugo.
Les Misérables?
So someone likes French literature, Tony muttered from the corner. So what? So Hugo's novel had chapter titles, Elena said, her literature degree suddenly very relevant. Specific chapters about waiting, about port cities, about hidden meetings. If someone wanted to send coded instructions using classic French novels as a cipher key. Lorenzo's expression changed. They could hide messages in plain sight. Anyone intercepting this would just see a flowery report. Exactly. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she grabbed a clean sheet of paper. Give me a few minutes. She worked backward through the document, pulling out every literary reference. Dumas, The Count of Monte Cristo, chapters about Marseille and smuggling routes. Hugo, Les Miserables, sections about Paris sewers and underground movements. Balzac, Lost Illusions, passages about betrayal and false partnerships. June roses in Marseille, she muttered, writing quickly. Monte Cristo escaped in June. Chapter 14, The Docks, the Shipping Schedules. If we assume Dumas' references mean maritime routes. Vincent was suddenly standing beside her, reading over her shoulder.
Wait.
Say that again. The Dumas references might indicate specific shipping routes. Dates, locations, Elena pointed to her notes. And the Hugo quotes. Look at this one. Les miserables que attendent dans le corridor du Nord. The miserable ones waiting in the northern corridor. That's not just poetic language. Northern corridor. Vincent pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. He pulled up a map, zoomed in on a section of coastline. The northeastern shipping channels. Our rivals have been moving product through there for 6 months. We've been trying to figure out their schedule. Lorenzo stood up, walking to Elena's side. What else? Elena worked faster now, confidence building. This section about Balzac. Les illusions produced dans la maison de traders. Lost illusions in the house of traders. Balzac's novel was about false friends, people who pretend loyalty but sell you out. Names, Lorenzo said quietly. They're giving us names of people inside our organization. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Elena continued translating, pulling apart layers of meaning. Shipping dates hidden in chapter numbers. Warehouse locations disguised as literary references. And threaded through everything, warnings about someone close to Lorenzo's operation, someone feeding information to rivals. A traitor. Vincent made 3 phone calls in rapid succession, speaking in code even Elena couldn't crack. When he hung up, he looked at Lorenzo. It matches. The cipher method. Paris used something similar 2 years ago in the Brussels operation. Literary codes, classic French texts as keys. If she's right about the shipping dates, we can intercept them. Lorenzo's voice was steel. Before they even know we have this. He turned to Alain and Christophe, who'd been silent witnesses to this entire breakdown. Tell Paris we received their message. Tell them we appreciate their detailed information. The 2 Frenchmen nodded and quietly left the room. Lorenzo pulled out his phone. Marco, I need 3 teams ready by dawn. No, don't ask questions. Just have them ready. He hung up and looked at Vincent. Start with the northeastern ports. Discreet surveillance only. I want to know who's moving what, when, and who's tipping them off. On it, boss. As Vincent coordinated with other lieutenants, Lorenzo finally turned to Elena. She looked exhausted, still in her waitress uniform, surrounded by pages of decoded intelligence she'd pulled from a language most people couldn't even read. You did good work tonight, Miss Marsh. He pulled out his wallet, counted out $500 bills, and set them on the table. For your time. And your discretion. Elena stared at the money. It was more than she made in 2 weeks. Thank you. Vincent will drive you home. Don't talk about any of this. Not to friends, not to coworkers, not to anyone. Understood? Yes, of course. Good. Lorenzo's tone was final, dismissive. We'll take it from here. 20 minutes later, Elena was in the back of a black Mercedes, Vincent driving in silence through empty streets. Her apartment building looked smaller somehow, shabbier after the marble and crystal of the Hotel Marchand. "Thanks for the ride," she said, climbing out. Vincent just nodded and drove away. Inside her tiny studio, Elena kicked off her shoes and collapsed on her bed. Her mind was still racing with French phrases, hidden codes, dangerous secrets. But it was over now. She'd helped them decode one document, made some easy money, and that was the end of it. She'd go back to work tomorrow, pour wine, smile at customers, forget this strange night ever happened. It was just one weird evening. Nothing more. Elena had no idea that at that exact moment, 3,000 miles away in Paris, someone was making a phone call. Someone who'd been very carefully watching who decoded that document. Someone who now knew exactly who Elena Marsh was, where she worked, and how to find her. The game hadn't ended. It had only just begun. The warehouse on Pier 17 looked abandoned. That was the point. Lorenzo stood in the shadows across the street, watching his men work. Marco and two others moved quietly around the building's perimeter, taking photos, checking locks, documenting everything. Vincent was beside him, phone pressed to his ear, coordinating with another team 15 miles north. "Got it," Vincent said into the phone. "Keep eyes on the location. Nobody moves until I say so." He hung up. The offshore accounts check out. 3 shell companies, all registered in the past 8 months. Money flowing through exactly like the document said. Lorenzo nodded. Elena's decoding had been perfect. Every location, every date, every detail was matching up. The northeastern corridor warehouses were exactly where the coded references suggested. His rivals had been running product right under his nose for half a year, and he'd been too focused on the wrong places to notice. But now he knew, and knowledge was everything. "How many men do we have on this?" Lorenzo asked. "Just the core team. 8 total. All guys who've been with you 10 years or more." Vincent's voice was careful. "Like you said, tight circle only." "Good." Lorenzo watched Marco photograph a shipping manifest through a grimy window. "Because someone close is feeding information out. Until we know who, we trust nobody else." His phone buzzed. A text from Tony. "Second location confirmed. Activity spotted." "They're moving product today," Vincent said, reading over his shoulder. "Just like the document predicted. Friday morning, northeastern route, exactly on schedule." "Let them." Lorenzo turned away from the warehouse. "We watch. We learn their full pattern. Then we take everything at once." Vincent smiled grimly. "They have no idea we know." "That's how we keep it." Lorenzo headed back to the car. "And Vincent?" "The girl, Elena Marsh. The background check. What did it say?" "Clean. No record, no connections to any families. Literature major, like she said, dropped out senior year. Works 3 jobs to pay rent. No red flags. Except she reads French like a Paris native." "Yeah." "Except that." Vincent opened the car door. "You want surveillance on her too?" Lorenzo considered it. The smart move would be yes, watch everyone connected to this, keep all potential leaks contained. But something made him hesitate. Elena Marsh had genuinely stumbled into this. Wrong place, right skills, pure accident. Still, accidents could be dangerous. Light surveillance, Lorenzo decided. Just make sure she's safe, not talking to anyone. She knows too much now. On it. Neither of them noticed the second car parked 3 blocks away, or the telephoto lens aimed at the warehouse. Some watchers were better at hiding than others. Elena woke up at 9, groggy and disoriented. She'd barely slept, her dreams full of French phrases and dangerous men in expensive suits. Her phone showed 2 missed calls from her manager at the restaurant, asking if she could cover lunch shift. Elena texted back a yes and dragged herself to the shower. Everything felt surreal in morning light. Had last night really happened? The dossier, the codes, $500 in cash sitting on her dresser. She counted the bills again, just to make sure. Real. All of it was real. Elena made coffee and tried to return to normal. She had a shift at 3, but first she needed to hit the library, her other part-time job shelving books on Fridays. Routine. Normal. Boring, wonderful routine. She grabbed her bag and headed downstairs. That's when she first saw the black car. It was parked across the street, engine running. Tinted windows. Nobody getting in or out.
Just sitting there.
Elena told herself it was nothing. People parked on this street all the time. It was a city. Cars were everywhere. She walked to the bus stop, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling in her stomach. The library shift passed slowly. Elena shelved returns, helped an elderly man find a biography section, restocked the periodicals. Every time she looked out the front windows, she found herself scanning for black cars. Ridiculous. She was being paranoid. But when she left at 2:30, there was a black sedan parked half a block down. Different car. Same feeling. Elena walked faster toward the bus stop. The sedan didn't move. She waited 15 minutes for the bus, very aware of the car's presence, trying not to look directly at it. When the bus finally came, she climbed on and took a seat in the back. The sedan pulled into traffic behind them. Okay, now she was being paranoid. The bus made stops every 3 blocks. Lots of cars stayed behind buses in city traffic. That didn't mean anything. Except the sedan was still there 4 stops later. And 6 stops after that. Elena's heart was pounding now. She pulled out her phone, but who would she call? The police? And say, what? A car was driving on the same road as her bus? Vincent had said not to talk to anyone about last night. But this couldn't be related. Could it? She got off at her usual stop, 3 blocks from the restaurant. The sedan drove past without slowing.
Elena exhaled. See?
Nothing. Just her imagination running wild after one weird night with the mob. She walked toward the Hotel Marchand, trying to shake off the paranoia. The afternoon sun was bright. The streets were full of people. Everything was fine. Then she saw him. A man in a dark jacket, leaning against a building across from the restaurant entrance. He wasn't doing anything obvious, just standing there, scrolling on his phone. But something about the way he glanced up when Elena approached made her skin crawl. And his accent, when he spoke into the phone, was distinctly French. Elena's blood went cold. She walked past him quickly, pushed through the restaurant's employee entrance, and stood in the back hallway trying to catch her breath. This was crazy. She was being crazy. Lots of people spoke French. It was a coincidence. But her hands were shaking as she tied on her apron. You okay? Sarah, another waitress, gave her a concerned look. You look like you saw a ghost.
Ivy fine.
Just tired. Elena went through the motions of her shift, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time someone new entered the restaurant, her eyes darted to the door. Every time her phone buzzed, she jumped. At 7 during her break, she stepped outside for air. The man in the dark jacket was gone. Different man now, different jacket, same feeling. This one was reading a newspaper across the street, his eyes hidden behind sunglasses, even though the sun was setting. Elena's instinct was screaming at her now. She pulled out the business card Vincent had given her when he dropped her off. Just in case, he'd said. Her thumb hovered over the number. Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe these were just random people, and she was connecting dots that didn't exist. But then the man with the newspaper looked directly at her, and Elena saw him speak into a small radio on his collar. Her decision was made. Elena dialed Vincent's number with trembling fingers. He answered on the first ring. Miss Marsh, I think someone's following me, she said quietly. And I don't think they're with you. Where are you right now? Vincent's voice went sharp and focused. Outside the restaurant. Employee entrance. Elena tried to keep her voice steady. There's a man across the street. He's been watching me for the past 20 minutes. And earlier there were cars. Don't move. Stay exactly where you are. She heard him speaking to someone else, muffled. I'm sending people. 5 minutes. Can you go back inside? I'm supposed to be on break. If I go back in now, I don't care. Get inside. Stay around other people. Do not go anywhere alone. The line went dead. Elena pocketed her phone and turned back toward the door. Her hand was on the handle when she heard footsteps behind her. Excuse me, miss. She froze. The voice was male, polite, with an accent that definitely wasn't American. Elena turned slowly. The man was young, maybe 30, wearing a delivery uniform, brown shirt, brown pants, clipboard in hand. He looked completely normal, except for his eyes, which were cold and calculating, and the accent that her ear immediately identified. French. He was French. Delivery for Hotel Marchand staff, he said, holding up a small package. I need a signature. I don't work at the front desk. You'll need to go around to the main entrance. Elena's hand tightened on the door handle. The front desk sent me here. They said any staff member could sign. He stepped closer, smiling. It didn't reach his eyes. It will only take one moment. Elena's instincts were screaming. Real delivery drivers didn't track down staff members in back alleys. They didn't speak with French accents while delivering to an Italian hotel. They didn't look at you like they were memorizing your face. I'm not authorized to sign for packages, she said firmly. You need to go to the main entrance. She pulled open the door. His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop her. I think you should come with me, Miss Marsh. His accent was thicker now, not even trying to hide it. We have questions about last night. About what you read. Elena's heart stopped. They knew her name. They knew about the document. Let go of me. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. This doesn't have to be difficult. The roar of an engine cut him off. A black SUV screeched around the corner, tires smoking. It slammed to a stop 10 feet away, and 3 men piled out before it even fully stopped moving. Marco was the first one out, and he was holding a gun. The delivery man's hand released Elena's wrist instantly. He took 2 steps back, raising his hands. I'm just making a delivery. You're making a mistake, Marco said coldly. Walk away. Now. For a second, Elena thought the man would argue. His hand twitched toward his pocket. But then he saw the other 2 men flanking Marco, saw the way they moved like trained soldiers, and his survival instinct kicked in. He turned and walked quickly down the alley, disappearing around the corner. Marco kept his gun out until the man was gone. Then he looked at Elena. Get in the car. What? I can't just leave work. You're done working here. Get in the car. It wasn't a request. One of the other men, a stocky guy with a scar across his jaw, went inside the restaurant. Elena heard him talking to someone, probably her manager, his voice authoritative but polite. 30 seconds later, he came back out holding her purse and jacket. All handled. Let's go. Elena found herself being guided into the SUV's back seat, Marco on one side, another guard on the other. The man with the scar took the driver's seat, and they were moving before she could even process what was happening. What about my things? My apartment. Elena's voice was rising. You can't just kidnap me. We're not kidnapping you. We're protecting you. Marco was texting rapidly on his phone. That man wasn't a delivery driver. He was scouting you. Testing your security. If we'd been 2 minutes later. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Elena's hands were shaking now. How did they even know who I am? I just translated one document. I didn't do anything. You cracked their code. That makes you valuable. Marco glanced at her. It also makes you a target. The SUV wove through traffic, taking turns that seemed random but clearly weren't. Elena watched the city pass by, everything familiar suddenly feeling alien and dangerous. Where are we going? Somewhere safe. 20 minutes later, they pulled into an underground parking garage. Elena was led through a service elevator, up to the 8th floor of a building she didn't recognize. The apartment they entered was clean, modern, and completely impersonal. Hotel-like. Temporary. And Lorenzo de Luca was waiting inside. He stood by the window, phone in hand, and turned when they entered. His expression was serious, Not angry, but calculating. Assessing. Miss Marsh. I apologize for the dramatic extraction. He pocketed his phone. But Vincent informed me of your situation, and we needed to move fast. What situation? Elena's voice cracked slightly. This is insane. Yesterday, I was a waitress. Today I'm being grabbed in alleys by fake delivery men and you're kidnapping me. You're not kidnapped, Lorenzo's voice was calm, which somehow made everything worse. But you are in danger. Real danger. The people who wrote that document know you decoded it. They know you helped us.
How?
How would they even know? That's an excellent question. Lorenzo exchanged a glance with Marco. One we're working on answering. Elena sank onto the couch, her legs suddenly weak. This is crazy. I just read some French. That's all I did. You didn't just read French. You broke a cipher that cost someone a lot of money and planning to create. Lorenzo sat across from her. You exposed routes, methods, and likely cost them millions of dollars. People have been killed for less. The words hung in the air like a physical weight. Elena looked up at him, really looked at him. Lorenzo De Luca, who bought hotels and ran this city from shadows. Who dealt in secrets and violence like other people dealt in stocks and bonds. What do you want from me? She asked quietly. Right now? I want to keep you alive, Lorenzo leaned forward. Which means you stay here, with protection, until we figure out who's after you and neutralize the threat. For how long? As long as it takes. Elena thought about her apartment, her jobs, her normal life. All of it suddenly feeling very far away. Do I have a choice? Lorenzo's expression softened slightly. You always have a choice, Miss Marsh. But the man who grabbed you today? He was the polite version. The next one might not be. Elena closed her eyes. 24 hours ago, she'd been worried about making rent. Now she was hiding in a safe house because people wanted to hurt her for reading French. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Good, Lorenzo stood. Marco and Tony will be stationed outside. You need anything, you ask them. Don't leave this apartment. Don't call anyone. Understood?
Elena nodded numbly.
As Lorenzo headed for the door, he paused. For what it's worth, you did good work last night. But that work has consequences. Welcome to my world, Miss Marsh. The door closed behind him, leaving Elena alone in a strange apartment with guards outside and enemies she couldn't see. Her normal life was officially over. Elena didn't sleep. She sat on the couch, watching the city lights through bulletproof windows, trying to understand how her life had turned into a crime thriller in less than 48 hours. At 10 p.m., there was a knock on the door. Miss Marsh? It's Lorenzo. I'm coming in. The door opened before she could respond. Lorenzo entered, followed by Vincent and a woman Elena hadn't seen before, tall, professional, carrying a leather briefcase. This is Angela Romano, Lorenzo said. She's my attorney. She's going to explain some things, and then we need to talk. Angela sat down across from Elena, opening her briefcase. Miss Marsh, I need to be very clear about your situation. The people who approached you today aren't random criminals. They're professionals. Based on the description Marco provided, we believe they're part of a European syndicate with operations in 6 countries. Elena's stomach dropped. European syndicate? The document you decoded last night revealed significant intelligence about their American operations, Angela continued. Shipping routes, money laundering channels, and, most importantly, the identity of someone feeding them information from inside Mr. De Luca's organization. A traitor, Elena said quietly.
Yes.
Which means 2 things. Angela's voice was firm, but not unkind. First, you're in danger because you have information they can't afford to let spread. Second, you're valuable to us because you're the only person who can finish decoding that document. Elena looked up sharply. Finish? I decoded the whole thing last night. Lorenzo stepped forward. You decoded the first 12 pages. There are 18 more. He pulled out the cream-colored dossier and set it on the coffee table. Elena recognized it immediately, but now it was thicker, more pages visible. The courier only gave us the first section initially, Lorenzo explained. A test, to see if we could read it. Once you crack the code, Paris sent the rest. It arrived this afternoon. Elena stared at the document. What's in the rest? We don't know. That's the problem. Vincent moved to stand by the window. The literary references get more complex, more obscure. Even with your initial key, we can't crack it. We've had 3 people try, Lorenzo added. 2 French speakers from Columbia University and a linguistics professor. None of them could make sense of it. The codes are too specific, too layered. Elena picked up the document with trembling hands. She flipped to page 13 and immediately saw what they meant. The references were no longer to famous novels. They were to specific poems, obscure 19th century manuscripts, regional folklore. This is advanced literary knowledge, she murmured. Not just language. You'd need to know French literary history, symbolism, regional variations. Which is exactly your background, Angela said. Your university transcripts show you specialized in French Romantic literature with a focus on coded revolutionary texts. Elena's head snapped up. You looked at my transcripts? We looked at everything. Lorenzo's tone wasn't apologetic. Your thesis was on hidden meanings in French resistance poetry during World War II. You wrote 70 pages on how writers embedded secret messages in published works. Elena felt exposed, vulnerable. Her academic work, something she'd abandoned when money ran out, suddenly under scrutiny by dangerous people. Why did you drop out? Lorenzo asked, his voice gentler. My father got sick. Medical bills. I had to work. Elena's throat tightened. He died anyway. I couldn't afford to go back. Silence filled the room for a moment. I'm sorry, Lorenzo said, and he actually sounded like he meant it. But your expertise, what you studied, what you know, it's exactly what we need right now. Elena looked at the 3 of them. And if I say no, then we keep you safe until this blows over, Lorenzo said immediately. You're under my protection either way. That doesn't change. But, Angela interjected, if you help us decode the full document, you help us identify the traitor before they do more damage. You help us stop whatever the syndicate is planning. And you potentially save lives. Whose lives? Elena asked. Lorenzo met her eyes.
Mine.
My people's. Maybe yours. This isn't just business rivalry, Miss Marsh. The references to betrayal in that document, if there's a coordinated attack coming, if someone inside is setting us up for a hit, people will die. Maybe a lot of people. Elena's hands tightened on the document. She thought about the fake delivery man, about his cold eyes and firm grip, about how easily violence had almost touched her in that alley. If I do this, she said slowly, I need to know what I'm really helping with. Not code names. Not vague threats. The truth. Lorenzo exchanged a glance with Vincent, then nodded. He sat down across from her. The truth is that I run most of the organized operations in the city. Some legal, some not. I have enemies, other families, rival operations, people who want what I control. Usually we maintain balance. But this European syndicate is trying to move into American territory aggressively. The document suggests they've compromised someone close to me, and they're planning something big. If I don't know who the traitor is, they could take out half my operation before I even see it coming. And if they take you out? Elena asked. Then this city tears itself apart. Power vacuum.
War.
A lot of innocent people caught in the crossfire. Lorenzo's expression was grave. I'm not the good guy, Miss Marsh. I'm not going to pretend I am. But I keep order. I keep things controlled. What comes after me would be chaos. Elena believed him. She'd lived in this city her whole life. She knew about the territories, the unspoken rules, the way violence was kept contained. Remove the containment, and things would get ugly fast. How long would it take to decode the rest? We don't know. Could be days. Could be a week. Vincent stepped closer. We'll set you up with everything you need, reference materials, internet access, whatever helps. You'll work with Vincent and me directly. And my safety. 2 bodyguards, full-time. Lorenzo gestured to the door. Marco and Tony. They're my best. They'll be outside your door, around the clock. Nobody gets to you without going through them first. Elena looked down at the document in her hands. Pages of French text that would look like gibberish to most people, but held secrets that could get her killed. She thought about her tiny apartment, her 3 jobs, her quiet life. All of it already gone. Ripped away the moment she opened her mouth in that restaurant.
She could say no.
Let them protect her passively. Wait it out. But she'd never been good at passively waiting while other people handled things. Okay, Elena said finally. I'll do it. But I want something in return. Lorenzo raised an eyebrow. Name it. When this is over, when I've decoded everything and you've dealt with your traitor, I want help finishing my degree. Done. I'm not finished. I also want a real job. Not waitressing. Not shelving books. Something that uses my actual skills. Lorenzo smiled slightly. Also done. Anything else? Elena met his eyes.
Yes.
Don't lie to me. About the danger, about what I'm decoding, about anything. If you need me to trust you enough to do this, I need you to be honest. Lorenzo stood and extended his hand. You have my word. Elena shook it, feeling like she was making a deal with the devil. But maybe that was accurate. Vincent will bring you everything you need to work, Lorenzo said, heading for the door. Marco and Tony are outside. You're safe here. After they left, Elena sat alone with the document, feeling the weight of what she'd agreed to. Somewhere in these pages were names.
Plans.
Secrets worth killing for. And she was the only one who could find them. She opened to page 13 and began to read. Day 1. Elena worked for 16 hours straight. Vincent brought her a laptop, 3 French literature anthologies, and a stack of notebooks. He set up shop at the dining table with his own laptop, cross-referencing everything she found against known locations, names, and operations.
Les fantômes de Baudelaire errent dans les corridors abandonnés. Elena Ridalou, Den translated.
The ghosts of Baudelaire wander the abandoned corridors. Baudelaire, Vincent typed rapidly. The poet. Yes, but which poem? He wrote hundreds. Elena flipped through one of the anthologies. Wait, Corridors Abandoned Corridors. That's from Les Fleurs du Mal, the section about urban decay and forgotten spaces. Warehouses, Vincent said immediately. They're talking about unused warehouses. But where? Elena studied the next line.
Où les fleurs du mal fleurissent sous le regard du gardien corrompu chiffronned.
Where the flowers of evil bloom under the gaze of the corrupt guardian. Vincent's fingers flew across his keyboard. Corrupt guardian. That's got to be a person. Someone in a position of authority who's been bought off. Elena spent 2 more hours breaking down the Baudelaire references, cross-matching them with geographical clues embedded in the text. By midnight, they had 3 possible warehouse locations and 4 names of city officials who might be compromised. Lorenzo arrived at 1 a.m. with coffee and food. He sat quietly in the corner, watching Elena work. You should eat, he said. In a minute, Elena was deep in page 17 now, unraveling references to Rimbaud's A Season in Hell. This section is about timing.
Seasons dates.
They're planning something specific. Vincent looked up from his notes. Can you narrow it down?
L'enfer commence avec les premières neiges, Elena murmure.
Hell begins with the first snows. That's not Rimbaud's original phrasing. Someone modified it. First snow in this city usually comes in late November, Vincent said. That's 6 weeks away. Elena's pen froze over her notebook. They're planning something in 6 weeks. The room went silent. Lorenzo stood up slowly. What kind of something? Elena kept reading, her pulse quickening. The next section references Dante, Inferno, the circle of treachery. Then there's a line about les loups parmi les brebis, wolves among the sheep. The traitor, Vincent said. They're going to use the traitor to strike during first snowfall. Lorenzo pulled out his phone and made a call.
Marco.
I need expanded security on all primary locations starting immediately. No, I'll explain later. Day 3. Elena barely left the table. The codes were getting more complex, the literary references more obscure. She found herself pulling from memories of lectures she'd taken 5 years ago, papers she'd written on regional French dialects and their symbolic meanings. This section uses Breton folklore, she explained to Lorenzo, who'd taken to working from the apartment during her sessions. Brittany region, northwestern France. The references to Corrigan's Dawn-less caves. Corrigans are mythical creatures that guard underground treasures. Underground, Lorenzo leaned forward. Subway tunnels? Sewers? Or basement networks, Elena pointed to another passage. Here. Les chemins souterrains que seuls les traders connaissent. The underground paths that only traders know. Vincent pulled up city infrastructure maps. The old smuggling tunnels. We thought they were all sealed after the 80s. Apparently not all of them, Elena said. She spent the next 4 hours decoding references that revealed not just locations, but specific routes. Underground paths connecting warehouses to subway stations, old Prohibition-era tunnels that had been quietly reopened. Lorenzo watched her work with something like fascination. She'd stopped being nervous around him somewhere during hour 10 of day 2. Now she argued with Vincent about historical context, challenged Lorenzo's interpretations, and once told Vincent he was being an idiot about Victor Hugo's political metaphors. "You're good at this," Lorenzo said during a late-night break on day 4. Elena looked up, surprised. At what? Reading French? At seeing patterns? At thinking like someone who hides information? He gestured to her pages of notes. Most people read text linearly. You read it like a puzzle box. That's what coded resistance poetry was, Elena said. French writers during the war couldn't publish openly, so they hid messages in metaphor, in literary references their readers would understand but occupiers wouldn't. It's a whole language built on shared cultural knowledge. And you speak it fluently. Elena shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. I wrote a thesis on it. Doesn't make me special. It makes you exactly what we need. Lorenzo's expression was serious. Vincent told me you negotiated for a real job when this is over. I'm starting to think I should have negotiated harder. You're worth more than I'm paying you. Elena felt her cheeks warm. You're paying me in survival. That seems like fair market rate. Lorenzo laughed. The first time she'd heard him do that. It changed his face completely, made him look younger, less dangerous. Fair point. Day 5, breakthrough. Elena found the names. They weren't written as names. They were embedded in character descriptions from Molière plays, in historical references to French Revolution figures, in metaphorical language about betrayal and false friendship.
Le Tartuffe qui porte le masque chez les lions, Elena translated, her voice shaking slightly.
The hypocrite who wears the mask among the lions. Tartuffe is a Molière play, Vincent said, about a con man who infiltrates a household. And lions. Lorenzo's face had gone stone cold. That's my organization. We use the lion symbol on certain documents. Elena kept reading, pulling out more references. By the time the sun rose on day 6, she had decoded 4 specific identifiers that matched people in Lorenzo's inner circle. One name made Vincent go pale. No, he whispered. Not him. Lorenzo's jaw was tight. You're sure about this? Elena showed him her work, pages of cross-referenced literary allusions, all pointing to the same conclusion. The codes are consistent. The references layer on top of each other. Unless someone deliberately planted false information in a way that perfectly mimics authentic French literary cipher patterns, this is accurate. Lorenzo stood and walked to the window. For a long moment he said nothing. Then Vincent. I need surveillance on these 4 people. Discreet. Total. I want to know every call they make, every person they meet, every breath they take. Boss. Do it, Lorenzo's voice was steel. And not a word to anyone else. Nobody knows we have these names except the 3 of us in this room. Vincent nodded and left. Elena sat back, exhausted. 6 days of intensive decoding, barely sleeping, living on coffee and takeout. Her eyes were burning, her hand cramped from writing. But she'd done it. Lorenzo turned from the window. You cracked the entire document. Yes. Including intelligence that 3 very expensive experts couldn't decode. I had the right background. You had the right mind. Lorenzo crossed the room and sat across from her. What you did this week, it's going to change everything. You know that, right? Elena looked at the pages spread across the table. Names of traitors, routes for attacks, plans that could have destroyed everything Lorenzo controlled. I just read French, she said quietly. You saved lives, Miss Marsh. Maybe including mine. Lorenzo's expression was strange, respect mixed with something else. I won't forget that. Elena met his eyes and saw something shift between them. No longer captor and captive. No longer boss and employee. Something closer to equals. What happens now? She asked. Lorenzo's expression hardened. Now we stop them. The problem started with a phone call Lorenzo shouldn't have received. It came at 3 a.m. on day 7, while Elena was finally sleeping in the safe house bedroom. Lorenzo was still awake in the living room, going over surveillance reports with Vincent, when his encrypted phone buzzed. Unknown number. International prefix. Lorenzo answered but said nothing. Monsieur de Luca. The voice was French, smooth and far too confident. I believe you have something that belongs to us. Lorenzo's expression went cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course not. Just as you don't know about the warehouses on Pier 17 and Pier 23. Just as you don't know about the 3 shell companies we've been monitoring for the past week. Just as you aren't currently investigating 4 of your own men. Lorenzo's blood went ice cold. You've been very busy, monsieur. Faster than we anticipated. Which tells us that someone decoded our document very thoroughly indeed. A pause. We'd like to speak with this decoder. The young woman, perhaps? Miss Marsh. The line went dead. Lorenzo lowered the phone slowly. Vincent was staring at him, reading his expression.
They know, Lorenzo said.
They know she decoded it. They know her name. And they know we're moving on their operations. How is that possible? Vincent's voice was sharp. We've kept this tight. Only the core team knows about Elena. Which means the leak isn't just about operations. Lorenzo's mind was racing. They have someone close enough to know about our internal investigation. Someone who's been watching us watch them. Vincent pulled out his phone. I'll increase security.
No, Lorenzo Studebratli.
We move her.
Now.
Different safe house, different guards. Marco and Tony stay on the decoy location. We use fresh faces, people the leak doesn't know about. He walked to the bedroom door and knocked. Miss Marsh. Wake up. We're leaving. 20 minutes later, Elena was in the back of a different car with 2 new bodyguards she'd never seen before. One was a woman, tall, muscular, with cold eyes and a gun visible in her shoulder holster. The other was a quiet man who'd introduced himself simply as Davis and spent the entire drive scanning every vehicle around them. They'd left through a service exit, moved through back alleys, switched cars twice. Professional evasion tactics that made Elena's stomach churn. What happened? She asked as they drove through the pre-dawn darkness. The rivals know you cracked their code, Lorenzo said from the front seat. He'd insisted on coming personally. They're escalating. Escalating how? Lorenzo's jaw tightened. They called me. Directly. Mentioned you by name. Elena felt like she'd been punched. How do they even? We're working on that. His voice was controlled fury. But until we know how compromised we are, you're going somewhere nobody knows about. The new safe house was in a completely different part of the city, a high-rise apartment building in a business district. 20th floor, corner unit, with sight lines covering all approaches. The woman bodyguard, whose name was Sarah, did a full sweep of the apartment before allowing Elena inside. No bugs, no cameras, no surprises, Sarah reported. We're clear. Lorenzo pulled Elena aside while Sarah and Davis secured the perimeter. I need you to understand something. These people aren't playing games anymore. The fact that they called me directly, that they know your name, they're sending a message. What message? That they want you. Specifically, Lorenzo's expression was grave. Either to silence you, or to use you. Either way, you're now the most important piece on the board. Elena's hands were shaking. I just wanted to finish decoding the document. Help you catch the traitor. You did that. You did it so well that now they're panicking. Lorenzo's voice softened slightly. Which means we're winning. But it also means they're going to get desperate. Over the next 2 days, the situation deteriorated fast. Vincent's surveillance teams reported increased activity around Elena's old apartment, multiple unfamiliar faces, expensive surveillance equipment, questions being asked to her former neighbors. Someone had leaked her home address. Then her photo appeared on a freelance mercenary forum, deep in the dark web. Vincent showed it to Lorenzo, his expression grim. $50,000 bounty, Vincent said quietly, for information leading to her location. $100,000 for physical delivery. Lorenzo stared at the screen. Elena's face, a photo pulled from some social media account she'd forgotten about years ago, displayed like a wanted poster. Who posted it? Anonymized. Routed through 6 countries. Professional job, Vincent closed the laptop. But boss, that's mercenary money. They're not just using their own people anymore. They're outsourcing. Lorenzo stood and walked to the window. 20 floors below, the city continued its normal rhythm, unaware of the war being fought in its shadows. Pull everyone in, he said finally. All operations go dark except essential protection details. Every available person goes to counter-surveillance. I want to know every mercenary who even thinks about taking this contract. Boss, that's 40 people minimum. It'll cripple our other operations. I don't care, Lorenzo turned, his expression absolute. The girl stays alive, whatever it costs. Vincent nodded and left to make the calls. Lorenzo returned to the main room where Elena sat at the dining table, surrounded by her decoded notes. She was organizing them into clear reports, names, locations, dates, everything systematically documented. You should stop working on that for now, Lorenzo said. Elena looked up.
Why?
I'm almost done with the final analysis. Because you've given us everything we need. The rest is our job, he sat across from her. And because I need you to focus on staying safe, not on work. I'm safer working. Gives me something to do besides think about the fact that professional killers are looking for me. Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. Lorenzo reached across and gently took the pen from her hand.
Elena.
Listen to me. We're going to handle this. You're under my protection, and I've never lost someone under my protection. Never. There's a first time for everything. Not this time. His voice was steel and promise combined. I swear it. Elena wanted to believe him. But that night, as she lay awake in another strange bed in another temporary home, she heard Sarah and Davis talking quietly outside her door. Leaked her name to at least 6 different networks. 20 confirmed mercenaries in the city already. Only a matter of time before. Elena pulled the pillow over her head, trying to block out the words. Somewhere out there, people were hunting her. Professional killers with her photo, her name, her worth calculated in 6 figures. And the only thing standing between her and them was Lorenzo De Luca's promise. She hoped it was enough. The next morning, Lorenzo arrived at the safe house with a different energy. Not defensive. Not worried. Predatory. We're done running, he announced, setting his briefcase on the dining table. Time to make them run instead. Elena looked up from her coffee. She'd barely slept. What do you mean? I mean we stop playing defense and start playing offense. Lorenzo opened his briefcase and pulled out blank cream-colored paper, the same type as the Paris dossier. You decoded their messages. Now you're going to write some. Elena blinked. Write what? False intelligence. Fake codes. Messages that look exactly like the ones you just decoded. Lorenzo sat across from her, his expression sharp with purpose. You know their cipher patterns, their literary references, their methodology. You can replicate it. Understanding dawned slowly. You want to feed them false information. Exactly. They think they're hunting you. They think we're scrambling to protect you. They think they have the advantage. Lorenzo's smile was cold. Let's prove them wrong. Vincent arrived 20 minutes later with 2 laptops, reference books, and a determined expression. The Paris Courier channel is still active. We've identified 3 points, where we can insert documents into their network. Will they believe it's authentic? Elena asked, pulling the reference books closer. If it's good enough, Lorenzo looked at her directly. That's where you come in. You need to write codes that are indistinguishable from the real thing. Same style, same complexity, same literary patterns. Elena felt a flutter of nervousness. I've never written in code before. Only decoded. You've spent the last week living inside their methodology. You understand how they think, how they structure information. Lorenzo's voice was confident. You can do this. Elena took a deep breath and picked up a pen. Okay. What false information do we want to send? They worked for 6 hours straight. Elena crafted sentences in perfect literary French, embedding false intelligence in references to Balzac, Verlaine, and Mallarmé. She created fake shipping routes using metaphors from Les Miserables, invented meeting locations hidden in allusions to Madame Bovary, constructed entire false operations disguised as poetry analysis.
Les corbeaux de Verlaine se rassemblent au port oublié, chirote, then translated for Vincent.
Verlaine's crows gather at the forgotten port. Crows meaning operatives, Vincent said, typing notes. Which port? The one that doesn't exist, Elena smiled slightly. We're sending them to an abandoned dock that's been closed for 15 years. But the literary reference makes it sound active and important. Lorenzo watched her work with obvious fascination. You're good at this. I'm lying in French using dead poets as cover. It's weirdly fun, Elena continued writing. Here, a reference to Rimbaud's Illuminations that suggests a major shipment coming through the northern corridor on Thursday night. But the actual shipment? Vincent asked. Doesn't exist. We'll have an empty warehouse and a lot of their people waiting for nothing. Elena crafted another sentence. And this section uses proofs to indicate that Lorenzo will be at a specific restaurant Friday evening for a meeting. Lorenzo raised an eyebrow. Will I?
No.
But they'll send people to watch, maybe try to make a move. And when they do, we'll be watching them. Lorenzo's expression was satisfied. Good. What else? Elena spent another 2 hours creating a masterpiece of misdirection. False routes, fake meetings, invented betrayals, all wrapped in the same literary cipher the Paris syndicate had used. To anyone who could read it, the document looked like urgent internal intelligence about Lorenzo's operations and vulnerabilities. This section is my favorite, Elena said, showing Lorenzo a passage. It references the Count of Monte Cristo and suggests that Lorenzo's new translator has turned against him and is willing to share information. Vincent looked up sharply. You're making yourself the bait? I'm making myself the prize they think they've already won. Elena's voice was steady. If they believe I've betrayed Lorenzo, they'll reach out to me directly.
Try to make contact.
Absolutely not, Lorenzo said immediately. Think about it. They want me anyway. This gives us control over how they approach. We can set the terms, the location, the situation. Elena met his eyes. It's a trap, but one where we know exactly when and where it snaps shut. Lorenzo studied her for a long moment. You've gotten very comfortable with dangerous plans, Miss Marsh. I learned from the best. Vincent cleared his throat. Boss, she has a point. If they think she's turned, they'll be more reckless. Confident. Easier to track. Lorenzo stood and walked to the window, thinking. Finally, he turned back.
Fine.
But we do this my way. Complete control. The moment I think it's too risky, we pull back. Agreed. By evening, they had 3 complete documents ready. Each one looked identical to authentic Paris intelligence. Same paper, same wax seal, same cipher patterns. Vincent had identified the insertion points. The courier network runs through 3 intermediaries. We can substitute our documents at 2 of them without raising immediate suspicion. Do it, Lorenzo ordered. Tonight. I want these in their hands by tomorrow morning. As Vincent left to coordinate the operation, Lorenzo turned to Elena. You realize what you just did? You weaponized your own expertise. I weaponized their own system against them, Elena corrected. That's different. Is it? Lorenzo's expression was unreadable. A week ago, you were serving wine. Now you're engineering intelligence operations that could take down an international syndicate. Elena looked at the documents spread across the table, her handwriting, her codes, her trap. A week ago, I thought my biggest problem was making rent. Perspective changes fast. Does it scare you? How fast you've adapted? Elena considered the question honestly. Sometimes. But mostly it feels like I'm finally using my brain for something that matters. Even if what matters is organized crime. Lorenzo laughed. That genuine laugh she'd heard only once before. You're something else, Miss Marsh. Elena. We're co-conspirators now. You can use my first name. Elena, Lorenzo said it like he was testing the weight of it. Get some rest. Tomorrow the game changes. That night, while Elena slept, Vincent's teams moved through the city like ghosts. Documents were swapped, couriers were intercepted and replaced, false intelligence was injected into the pipeline with surgical precision. By dawn, the Paris syndicate was reading Lorenzo's lies written in Elena's perfect literary French. And they believed every word. In a hotel room across town, 3 men studied the new documents with growing excitement. The translator had turned. Lorenzo's operations were exposed. Opportunities were everywhere. They began making plans, assigning teams, coordinating strikes. Exactly as Lorenzo and Elena had anticipated. The trap was set. Now, they just had to wait for it to spring. Day 8. Thursday night. The fake shipment was scheduled for midnight. Lorenzo had converted the safe house living room into a command center. 3 laptops displayed live feeds from 6 different locations. Vincent coordinated on encrypted phones while Sarah and Davis monitored police scanners. Elena sat beside Lorenzo, watching the screens, her heart pounding. Team Alpha in position at the northern dock, Vincent reported. 8 hostiles spotted. They're setting up for the intercept. Team Bravo ready at the warehouse. Another voice crackled through the comms. Counting 12 people. They brought heavy equipment. Elena watched the infrared feeds showing figures moving through the darkness. Rival operatives, mercenaries, all converging on locations that Elena had invented with literary references and careful lies. They really believed it, she whispered. You made it believable. Lorenzo's eyes never left the screens. Every detail perfect. They had no reason to doubt. Vincent checked his watch. 11:45. Teams Charlie and Delta are in position at the restaurant and the secondary warehouse. And the traitors? Lorenzo's voice was ice. 2 of them are at the northern dock. One's at the warehouse. The 4th, Vincent hesitated. The 4th is watching from a vehicle 2 blocks from the restaurant. Just confirmed visual. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. Still can't believe it's him. Elena didn't know who the 4th person was, but she saw the pain flash across Vincent's face. Someone close. Someone trusted. All teams stand by, Lorenzo said into his headset. Nobody moves until I give the word. Let them commit fully. The minutes crawled by. On screen, the rival operatives moved into position. At the dock, men with weapons hidden under jackets. At the warehouse, a van pulling up to what they thought was a delivery entrance. At the restaurant, watchers settling in to observe Lorenzo's fake meeting. Midnight, Vincent announced. Execute, Lorenzo said quietly. Everything happened at once. On the northern dock feed, lights blazed on. Lorenzo's teams emerged from containers, from behind equipment, from boats moored nearby. The rival operatives froze, realizing too late they were surrounded. Elena watched as men dropped weapons and raised hands. No shots fired. Clean capture. Northern dock secure, a voice reported. 14 hostiles in custody, including Marcus Bellini. Elena saw Lorenzo's expression darken. Marcus Bellini, one of the names she'd decoded. One of the traitors. At the warehouse, the scene played out differently. The van tried to escape, but Lorenzo's people had blocked all exits. 3 minutes of chaos then. Warehouse secure. 10 hostiles down. 2 injured. Traitor identified, Paul Grierson. He tried to run. The restaurant operation was quieter. Elena watched the feed as Lorenzo's men simply approached the Watcher's car, boxed them in with 3 vehicles, and extracted them without drawing attention. The other restaurant patrons never even noticed. Restaurant clear. 8 hostiles, including Anthony Chun. 3 traitors accounted for. 1 remaining. Delta Team, Lorenzo said into his comm, status on Target 4. Static, then. Target 4 is mobile. Heading east on Parkway. 2 vehicles following. Lorenzo leaned forward, watching a new feed pop up. Dash cam from a pursuit vehicle. A black Mercedes weaving through light traffic, clearly aware it was being followed. Don't lose him, Lorenzo ordered. Elena watched the chase unfold on screen. The Mercedes took a sharp turn, then another. Lorenzo's vehicles stayed with it, professional and relentless. Then the Mercedes made a mistake. It turned into a parking garage, 3 entrances, but only 1 exit. We've got him, Vincent said with grim satisfaction. 5 minutes later. Target 4 in custody. It's confirmed, Robert Castellano. Lorenzo closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, his expression was carefully blank, but Elena saw the betrayal there.
Robert Castellano.
She'd heard Vincent mention that name. Someone who'd been with Lorenzo for 15 years. Bring them all to the warehouse on 5th, Lorenzo said. The empty one. I want to talk to them. As his teams confirmed and moved into cleanup mode, Lorenzo stood and walked to the window. The city glittered below, unaware that a small war had just been won in its shadows. It's over, Elena said quietly. This part is, Lorenzo didn't turn around. We caught their people, exposed the traitors, shut down their operations. They'll retreat, regroup, but they won't be a threat for months. Maybe longer. Then why do you look like we lost? Lorenzo finally turned to face her. Because Robert Castellano was my friend. Because Marcus Bellini saved my life in 2019. Because betrayal hurts even when you see it coming. Elena stood and walked to him. I'm sorry. Don't be. You did your job perfectly. This isn't on you, Lorenzo's voice was tired. This is the cost of the life I chose. Trust is temporary. Loyalty is bought and sold. I know that. But knowing it doesn't make it easier. Vincent approached carefully. Boss, we swept all locations. Found communication equipment, encoded documents, evidence of coordination with Paris. We've got everything we need for interrogation. Good. Set it up for tomorrow. Tonight, I want tight security on all locations and everyone involved. Lorenzo looked at Elena. Including you. Sarah and Davis stay on duty. This isn't over until we're sure we caught everyone.
Elena nodded.
Despite the victory, tension still hummed through the room. Over the next few hours, reports came in. 28 rival operatives captured total. 4 traitors identified and arrested. Weapon caches discovered. Communication networks dismantled. The Paris Syndicate's entire American operation had collapsed in one night. Lorenzo's phone rang at 3 a.m. He listened without speaking, then said simply, "Tell them we're not interested in negotiation. They lost. They retreat, or we make it permanent." He hung up and looked at Vincent. Paris wants a truce. They're pulling out of American territories. They have no choice, Vincent said. We destroyed their entire network in one night. Elena felt the weight of what they'd accomplished. 2 weeks ago, she'd been a waitress. Now she'd helped orchestrate the downfall of an international criminal operation. You should rest, Lorenzo said to her. You've earned it. So have you. Lorenzo smiled slightly. I'll rest when I'm sure we're safe. When every loose end is tied up. When I know exactly how deep this betrayal went. As Elena headed to the bedroom, exhausted, she heard Lorenzo and Vincent talking quietly. We need to figure out how Paris got Elena's information so fast, Vincent was saying. There's still a leak somewhere. Or there was, Lorenzo replied. Maybe one of the 4 we caught tonight. But Elena heard the doubt in his voice. The operation had been a success. The trap had worked perfectly. The enemies were defeated. So, why did it feel like something was still wrong? She fell asleep with that question unanswered, unaware that in a cell across town, one of the captured traitors was smiling. Some traps, it seemed, worked both ways. Day 9 dawned gray and cold. Lorenzo spent the morning in the warehouse on 5th Street, standing in a concrete room that smelled like oil and old metal. The 4 traders sat in chairs, hands zip-tied, faces showing various degrees of fear and defiance. Robert Castellano met Lorenzo's eyes. 15 years of friendship, and it came down to this. Why? Lorenzo asked simply. Money. Robert's voice was flat. Paris offered 3 times what you pay. Set me up for retirement. No offense, boss, but loyalty doesn't pay my daughter's medical bills. Lorenzo felt something cold settle in his chest. You could have asked me for help. I did. 2 years ago. You said you'd think about it. Robert shrugged. Paris didn't need to think. The other 3 had similar stories. Debt. Gambling problems. Blackmail. The syndicate had found their weaknesses and exploited them methodically. What did you give them? Vincent asked from the corner. Everything, Marcus Bellini admitted. Schedules, routes, security protocols. When you started investigating, we told them about the girl. About Elena. Lorenzo's hands clenched. You put a civilian in danger. She was never a civilian once she decoded that document, Paul Grierson said. She became an asset. Assets have value. Lorenzo turned away before he did something he'd regret. Get them out of here. I don't want to see them again. Vincent nodded. What do you want done? Nothing. Lorenzo's voice was tired. Put them on a plane to Europe. Tell Paris they can have them back. I'm done. Vincent looked surprised. Boss, they betrayed. And killing them won't change that. Just makes me feel worse. Lorenzo headed for the door. Let them live with what they did. That's punishment enough. By noon, the cleanup was complete. Every location had been scrubbed, evidence collected or destroyed. The captured rival operatives were being processed. Some would face charges through legitimate channels Lorenzo controlled. Others would simply be deported with quiet warnings never to return. Publicly, nothing had happened. No news reports. No police incidents. Just another Thursday night in the city. Internally, Lorenzo's organization shifted. New security protocols. New people in positions of trust. Money and promotions for those who'd stayed loyal. The message was clear. Betrayal had consequences, but so did loyalty. Vincent found Lorenzo in his office at the Hotel Marchand. Everything's handled. No loose ends. Paris confirmed they're withdrawing all operations from the Northeast. We won. Did we? Lorenzo stared at paperwork he wasn't really reading. You're still bothered by something. How did Paris know about Elena so fast? We had her identity locked down tight. The 4 traders said they reported her, but the timeline doesn't match. Someone told Paris about her within hours of her decoding that first document. Lorenzo looked up. Before the traders even knew she existed. Vincent frowned. You think there's someone else? I think we're missing something. Lorenzo closed the folder. But I can't figure out what. That afternoon, Lorenzo made a decision. I'm taking you back to the restaurant, he told Elena. Just for a few hours. Show your face. Let people see you're okay. The rumors are already spreading, and the best way to kill rumors is with boring normalcy. Elena looked uncertain. Is it safe? Sarah and Davis will be nearby. 2 more teams within a 3-block radius. Lorenzo's expression was serious. I think we got everyone, but I'm not taking chances. You stay visible, stay public, and if anything feels wrong, you leave immediately. Okay. The restaurant felt surreal. Elena walked through the employee entrance wearing her uniform, like she'd done hundreds of times before. But everything was different now. Her manager, Thomas, saw her and his face went pale.
Elena.
We weren't expecting you. I thought you'd quit. Just took some personal time. I'm back. Thomas nodded too quickly. Of course.
Yes.
Your section is ready. Table 7 is, well, it's available if you want it. Elena noticed other staff members watching her, whispering. their expressions a mix of curiosity, fear, and something else. Respect? Wariness. Sarah, the waitress who'd asked if she was okay 2 weeks ago, approached carefully.
Hey.
You all right? There were rumors you were in some kind of trouble. I'm fine. Just family stuff.
Right.
Family stuff, Sarah didn't believe her. And the men in suits who've been asking about you? Also family? Elena's heart skipped. What men? They came by last week, flashed badges, asked questions about you. Thomas told them you'd quit, hadn't left a forwarding address. Sarah lowered her voice. Elena, what's really going on? Nothing I can talk about.
I'm sorry.
Sarah studied her face, then nodded. Okay, but be careful, yeah? You're different. You look different. Like you've seen things. She wasn't wrong. Elena worked her shift, but it felt like acting. Going through motions of a life that didn't fit anymore. She smiled at customers, took orders, poured wine. But her mind was tracking exit routes, watching faces, conscious of Sarah and Davis positioned at nearby tables. Table 7 was occupied by a young couple celebrating an anniversary. They had no idea what had happened at that table 2 weeks ago, how a whispered French phrase had changed everything. At 8 p.m., Lorenzo arrived. He sat at the bar, ordered coffee, and watched her work. To anyone else, he was just another customer. But Elena felt the weight of his protection like armor. When her shift ended at 10, Lorenzo walked her out. 2 black SUVs were waiting. How did it feel? He asked. Strange. Like visiting a museum of my old life. Elena looked back at the restaurant. Everyone knows something happened. They just don't know what. That's how we keep you safe. Visible enough that you're not missing. Mysterious enough that no one knows the truth. Lorenzo opened the car door for her. Tomorrow we start talking about your future. The real one. Not waitressing. Elena climbed into the SUV, watching the Hotel Marchand disappear behind them. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Whatever you're involved in, stay safe. You're too smart to be serving drinks anyway. Elena smiled sadly and deleted the message. The city passed by outside the tinted windows. Somewhere out there, Paris was retreating. The traitors were gone. The immediate danger had passed. But Lorenzo's words echoed in her mind. I think we're missing something. And in a hotel room across the city, someone was making a phone call to Paris. The operation failed, but we learned what we needed to know. The girl is the key. Everything runs through her now. A pause, listening.
Yes.
I understand. Proceeding to phase 2-inch. The call ended. In the safe house that night, Elena slept peacefully, unaware that the real game was just beginning. And that sometimes winning the battle meant nothing if you didn't see the war. Day 12. The restaurant after closing. Elena was wiping down tables when Lorenzo arrived. She'd texted him asking to talk, needing to understand what came next. The past 2 weeks had been a whirlwind, and now that the immediate danger had passed, reality was setting in. Thank you for coming, she said, setting down her cleaning cloth. Lorenzo gestured to a table, not table 7, she noticed. Somewhere neutral. Of course. What's on your mind? Elena sat across from him, choosing her words carefully. I need to know what happens now. The danger's over, right? Paris retreated. The traitors are gone.
So,
am I still under protection? Or do I just go back to my life? Lorenzo was quiet for a moment. Can you go back? I don't know, Elena's voice was honest. Everyone here looks at me differently. My neighbors ask questions. My coworkers spread rumors. And honestly, after everything I've done, the decoding, the strategy, the work that actually mattered, going back to serving drinks feels impossible. Then don't. Lorenzo leaned forward, his expression serious and focused. Elena, I didn't come here just to answer your questions. I came to make you an offer. Elena's heart rate picked up. What kind of offer? A position in my organization.
Permanent.
Official. Lorenzo's words were measured. Professional. I need a personal translator and foreign operations advisor. Someone who can decode intelligence, communicate with international partners, analyze documents from Europe, Asia, anywhere we do business. Someone I can trust with sensitive information. You want me to work for you. Elena let the words settle. In organized crime. I want you to work with me. Using skills that would otherwise go to waste, Lorenzo's gaze was steady. You have a gift, Elena. Not just language, analysis, pattern recognition, strategic thinking. You proved that over the past 2 weeks. I'm offering you a chance to use those skills in ways your literature degree never could. Elena looked around the empty restaurant. This place had been her safety net for 3 years. Reliable tips, steady schedule, no surprises. But Lorenzo was right. After everything she'd experienced, everything she'd accomplished, going back felt like suffocating. What exactly would this job entail? She asked. Translation and interpretation for all foreign dealings. Analysis of international communications. Advisory role in European operations specifically. Lorenzo pulled out a folder and slid it across. Full salary, benefits, protection. You'd have an office at the Hotel Marchand, encrypted communication equipment, access to whatever resources you need. Elena opened the folder. The salary number made her blink. It was more than she'd made in 2 years of waitressing combined. This is generous. It's fair. You're worth it, Lorenzo's voice was firm. And Elena, this isn't charity. I'm not offering this because I feel guilty about putting you in danger. I'm offering because you're genuinely valuable. You've already proven that. What about the ethical part? The part where I'd be helping organized crime? Lorenzo didn't flinch from the question. I won't lie to you. What I do exists outside the law. But I also keep order. I prevent wars. I make sure the truly dangerous people stay contained, he paused. You've already helped me do that. You stopped a syndicate that deals in human trafficking, among other things. Paris wasn't just competing for territory. They run operations I would never touch. You helped shut that down. Elena hadn't known that detail. Human trafficking? Among other things. The intelligence you decoded revealed routes they use for moving people against their will. We passed that information to federal authorities anonymously. 3 rescue operations happened because of what you found. Lorenzo's expression was serious. I'm not a hero, Elena. But I'm not the worst option either. Elena absorbed this. The past 2 weeks had been about survival, about staying alive. She hadn't thought about the broader implications of what she'd decoded. If I say yes, what about safety? The threats? The immediate Paris threat is neutralized. But this life has inherent risks. You'd have protection, full-time if needed. Security protocols. Everything we discussed, Lorenzo's voice softened slightly. I won't pretend this is a normal job, but it's a real opportunity. A career using your actual education and talents. Elena thought about her thesis, gathering dust in some university archive. Her degree that led nowhere. Her father's medical bills that had derailed everything. 3 jobs that barely kept her afloat. And then she thought about the past 2 weeks. The intellectual challenge. The feeling of her mind working at full capacity. The satisfaction of solving complex puzzles that actually mattered. I need 2 promises, she said finally. Name them. First, you keep your word about helping me finish my degree. Part-time enrollment, whatever it takes.
Done.
What's the second? Honesty. Always. If I'm walking into danger, I need to know. If there's something I should understand about an operation, you tell me. No surprises, Elena met his eyes. I can handle the truth. I can't handle being kept in the dark. Lorenzo extended his hand across the table. You have my word. Complete honesty. Elena looked at his hand for a long moment. This was the line. Cross it, and her old life was officially over. Stay on this side, and she'd spend the rest of her life wondering what she'd missed. She shook his hand. Okay. I accept. Lorenzo smiled, genuine, warm. Welcome aboard. When do I start? Monday. We'll set up your office, get you security clearance, introduce you to the team properly. Lorenzo stood. Vincent will handle the logistics. And Elena? Thank you. I know this wasn't an easy decision. Thank you for seeing what I could do. Elena stood as well. Most people just saw Waitress. Most people are idiots.
Elena laughed, surprised.
I should give my notice here. 2 weeks is standard. Already handled. Thomas received a very generous donation to his restaurant in exchange for understanding you had a better opportunity elsewhere. Lorenzo headed for the door. Your last shift was tonight. You were that confident I'd say yes? I was that hopeful. Lorenzo paused at the door. Get some rest this weekend. Monday's going to be interesting. After he left, Elena stood alone in the empty restaurant. She looked at table 7 one last time, where this had all started with a whispered French phrase. 2 weeks ago, she'd been invisible. Now she was indispensable. Elena locked up the restaurant, turned off the lights, and walked out into the night. Sarah and Davis were waiting by their car, but she waved them off.
I'm okay.
I'll see you Monday. She walked the 3 blocks to the safe house alone, breathing the cold night air, processing everything. Somewhere in her mind, a small voice whispered that Lorenzo's concern about missing something was still unresolved. That phase 2 was still out there, whatever that meant. But tonight, for the first time in years, Elena felt like her life was moving forward instead of just surviving. She'd worry about the rest on Monday. Right now, she just wanted to enjoy the feeling of finally being exactly where she was supposed to be. Even if where she was supposed to be was working for the mob. 6 weeks later. The conference room on the Hotel Marchand's top floor had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Elena stood beside Lorenzo, wearing a tailored navy suit that still felt foreign but looked professional. Her hair was styled differently now, sleek, confident, deliberate. Across the mahogany table sat 5 men. 2 from Milan, 1 from Brussels, 2 from Paris. The same Paris organization that had tried to kill her was now negotiating a permanent territorial agreement. Times changed fast in this world.
Monsieur de Lucas, nous apprécions votre volonté de négocier, the lead Parisien Delgado said. Mais nos conditions doivent être claires.
He continued in rapid French, outlining terms. Elena listened carefully, then turned to Lorenzo. He says they appreciate your willingness to negotiate, but their conditions must be clear. They want exclusive access to the northern shipping routes on alternating weeks, plus 20% of the Port Authority contracts. She paused, her expression neutral. He's also implying that if you don't agree, they have alternative options. Lorenzo's eyes narrowed slightly. That's not what he said verbatim. No, but it's what he meant. Elena met his gaze. The phrasing, nos conditions doivent être claires, with that particular emphasis? It's a veiled threat. I can give you the literal translation if you prefer, but the subtext is what matters. Lorenzo smiled slightly and turned to the Parisian.
Dites à votre collègue que les menaces subtiles sont toujours des menaces. Et je ne réponds pas bien aux menaces.
The Parisian's eyebrows rose. He hadn't expected Lorenzo to speak French. Mademoiselle Marche, s'il vous plaît, he said, switching his attention to Elena. Peut-être pourriez-vous expliquer à votre employeur que nous cherchons simplement un arrangement équitable. Elena didn't miss a beat. He's asking me to explain to my employer that they simply want a fair arrangement. He's trying to appeal to me separately, probably hoping I'll soften the translation or advocate for their position. She turned to the Parisian and responded in flawless French.
Je ne suis pas une médiatrice. Je suis une traductrice et conseillère. Si vous voulez négocier équitablement, faites-le directement. Ne me manipulez pas.
The Milan representatives exchanged impressed glances. Vincent, sitting at Lorenzo's left, hid a smile. The Parisian nodded slowly, respect flickering across his face.
Mes excuses, mademoiselle. Je vois que nous avons sous-estimé votre rôle ici.
He apologizes, Elena translated. Says they underestimated my role here. They're not the first, Lorenzo said mildly. The meeting continued for another hour. Elena translated contracts, clarified ambiguities, and twice caught deliberate mistranslations in documents the European delegation presented. By the time they broke for lunch, the terms were fair and clearly defined. As the delegates filed out, the lead Parisian paused beside Elena.
Vous êtes impressionnante, mademoiselle Marche. Paris se souvient de ce que vous avez fait. Nous respectons cela.
After he left, Lorenzo turned to her. What did he say? That I'm impressive. That Paris remembers what I did and respects it. Elena's voice was thoughtful. It was almost an apology, acknowledging that they came after me and failed. They did more than fail. Lorenzo gathered his papers. They learned not to underestimate you, just like everyone else in this room did. Vincent approached, grinning. That was perfect. When you told him not to manipulate you, I thought his face would crack. Elena shrugged, but she was smiling. I learned from watching you both. Never let them think they can work around you. You're a natural, Vincent said. Boss, I think we should have her at all European negotiations from now on. Already planned on it. Lorenzo checked his watch. Elena, good work today. Take the rest of the afternoon. We'll brief tomorrow morning on the Barcelona situation. As Vincent left, Elena gathered her tablet and notes. Lorenzo walked her to the elevator. You've adjusted well, he said. 6 weeks ago, you were terrified in that first safe house. Now you're staring down international delegates like you've been doing it for years. 6 weeks ago, I thought my biggest skill was remembering drink orders. Elena pressed the elevator button. Turns out I was capable of more. Much more. Lorenzo's expression was serious. I meant what I said that night. You're not just valuable, you're essential. This organization runs smoother because you're part of it. The elevator arrived. Elena stepped inside, then turned back. Lorenzo? Thank you for seeing what I could be instead of just what I was. Thank you for proving me right. The doors closed, and Elena rode down alone. She looked at her reflection in the polished metal, professional, composed, confident. A woman who belonged in boardrooms and negotiations. Not the invisible waitress who'd casually read a French header 6 weeks ago. That woman had decoded a conspiracy, survived assassination attempts, outsmarted an international syndicate, and emerged as someone powerful in her own right. Her phone buzzed. A text from Vincent. Barcelona delegation arrives Tuesday. Need you to review their contracts tonight. Also, enrollment forms for university came through. You start spring semester.
Elena smiled.
Her degree, her career, her life, all moving forward simultaneously. The elevator reached the lobby. As the doors opened, Elena caught sight of the restaurant entrance. She could see tables, waitstaff moving efficiently, customers enjoying expensive meals. Table 7 was occupied by a businessman reading a newspaper. No idea what had started there. No idea how one overheard French phrase had changed everything. Elena walked past without stopping, out into the afternoon sunlight. Sarah and Davis were waiting by the car, but their presence felt routine now. Protection, not prison. Ms. Marsh, Sarah greeted her with a nod of respect. Not Miss Marsh anymore. Not the girl who needed saving. Ms. Marsh. The translator. The strategist. The woman who'd gone from invisible to indispensable in 6 weeks. As the car pulled into traffic, Elena opened her tablet and started reviewing the Barcelona contracts. Complex legal French, financial terminology, deliberate ambiguities that needed flagging. She smiled. This was exactly where she was supposed to be. And the best part? She was just getting started.